Well. Another red carpet rolled out for the Patriots. This wasn't quite so easy as the final score may have implied, but sure enough, here they are on another championship Sunday.
Bears and Rams battling in Chicago. Looks like both teams are fighting, and one at some point may actually book their ticket to Seattle.
Who's placing their final tickets for a bid to represent their conferences? We'll break it all down on Sunday Scaries with Buccs McGee.
You know, they say how some things change, but some things stay the same. Um, and the AFC, that could be true. But right now, looking like a fun one for the Rams and the Bears. I'm enjoying this one, baby. This one's looking good.
I am too. It's a snowy battle. A snowy battle for the rights to represent the NFC. Well, I guess not technically yet, but at least to get to that last point. A snowy battle to punch a ticket to go to the PNW, where it will probably not be snowing. Maybe it'll be raining.
And they'll be facing the Seahawks, who, after, last night's fiasco of, domination that we saw, it's good. It'll be interesting, but I've got to give the Bears credit so far. Great defensive battle. Yeah, the elements are probably playing a little hand in it, but still, they're going blow for blow against the Rams. Got to give them credit.
Yeah, very, very much so. And we were kind of forecasting this game in the sense of, are the Bears going to get off to a slow start and have to fight back like they usually do? And are the Rams going to proverbially play with their food, so to speak, and not be able to put them away? And it's tied at the half here, but I can't really say that either of those are super true.
No, it's basically both teams are just battling, trying to get some consistency on offense. The Bears defense, especially the front four, they're getting after Stafford, and that's the key. You can't let them sit in the pocket. You've got to force them to move out of the pocket to make his throws, and they're getting to him. On the flip side, the Rams, they always, their front four and such defensively, they always run, loops and stunts. And when Caleb rolls out of the pocket, he actually has been able to make some plays this year. He's definitely better than he was last year. And so it's just looking like, the Bears have been able to move the ball, but once they get, into the red zone, the Rams have tightened up. So it's just, I think this game is going to come down to who can get that consistent run going in that last series and end up scoring. It's going to be a tight one going into the final for sure.
Yeah. And let's go a little deeper on the Bears defense, because I think that's been a big storyline in this one. They've gotten to Stafford quite a bit, beating him up behind the line of scrimmage. You were very hard on the Rams for forgetting Kyron Williams is there. He's been mixed in a little bit here. He got the touchdown early, got the Rams on the board, but they kind of, I don't know whether we could say they're relying on him any better than they did against the Panthers. The Bears are trying to force turnovers, and this is kind of a surprise. Again, maybe it's just the elements, maybe it's the snow. The Rams, Stafford being an indoors quarterback for a long time and now playing in sunny Southern California, maybe kind of forgot what it was like to play out here in the elements.
Yeah.
But this is the Bears defense has surprised me.
No, they've definitely have shown up today. And, like you said, Stafford was an indoor quarterback, but, he, during his time, in Detroit, he's definitely, played in Green Bay, played in Chicago. So it's not like he's forgotten what the elements can do. It's just the fact that I think the Bears are not letting him get comfortable in the pocket, and they're forcing them to move around. Plus, with the elements, it makes it a little harder. They're gonna have to really use the run the second half of this game. They've got to really somehow figure out something to do and get both running backs going, and I think that'll just open things up. If they decide, every eighth play we're going to run the ball, it's not going to work. It just will not work. They've got to get some balance on the offense.
It's kind of amazing to me, and this is kind of true in both games of this Sunday, but particularly in this one, being how tight the game has been played, how the offensives forget, or at least the Rams, the Bears seem to be doing okay with it, but how the thought process when the elements are gross, when it's snowing, the thought process was always run, 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 because you can't see your receivers downfield as well. Turnovers are going to be more prone. You can't be throwing the ball up for the sake of a bad interception. It's kind of amazing to see a team like the Rams even more so drift away from the running game, considering the elements that are presented to them.
I think the Rams are just stubborn in this way. I think they feel this is how we're going to play it, and this is it. This is who we are. We're going to throw it, and that's it. We're going to make it work. They have no fear, I guess, is the best way. They're going to do it regardless. They're going to throw, and then go from there. But you can't, especially in this game, with this game and the way the weather is. You've got to have a solid run game. You've got to at least keep the Bears honest. You've got to figure it out, because if you're just going to sit there and think that Stafford's going to have time in the pocket, he's not. The Bears have shown this first half they can get after him. And if they think they're just going to let him sit there and throw it all over the place, it's not going to happen. So Kyren Williams has got to be a big part of this game. Second half, same thing with Blake Corum. Even if you're throwing screens or something, you just got to keep the Bears honest, because if you start going 3 and out, it's weird to say this, but Caleb will burn you, and it's really. Let's be real. I think he's earned that right now to this point. During the season, we were like, oh, here we go. He's going to roll out the pocket, throw a pick, or do something stupid. But he's gotten, and he's gotten better. And now you have to be legitimately concerned with him rolling out of the pocket. This offense almost works better when he does it now. They've kind of figured things out. So the Rams have got to, run the ball, eat the clock, keep the ball out of his hands, because this Bears offense can strike quick.
Well, and that does take us into the other part of what we've seen from this game is Caleb is still kind of being Caleb, and you've lambasted him in the past for that, to calm it down, be smart, just get the play done. You don't have to be sparkly and try to make Sports Center top 10 every week. But it's not really killing them in this. He's got a pick, but it hasn't really resulted in the Rams mounting a big lead for them to climb out of. So Caleb being Caleb, but in kind of a controllable, sustainable way.
It has to this point, but will it be a situation where it's late in the game and instead of maybe checking down or doing something else, he tries to be a hero, and especially if the weather continues to get worse, he's got to pick his spots. That's the biggest issue. It's not like he can't make these throws and such. It's just he's got to pick the time for it. Mm-hmm. And I think they've got a strong enough run game where lean on that and then go from there. He's got guys who can catch passes all over the place. The offense is a legitimate threat. That's at tight end, wide receiver. He's got guys all over the place. Don't try to make too much. Make 2 extra throws than trying to get the one big play.
Yeah, there was a couple. There was one play. Dunze has obviously missed some time of late, but there was one play where they really should have had a touchdown in it. And it was okay. It was maybe a little behind the receiver, but it still hit him square in both hands. So he still should have been able to pull that in. Loveland had a bad first half. And he's been someone that Caleb has very much been able to rely upon. So it's interesting how and the receivers have kind of been a little inconsistent, and Caleb's still been okay. And Mononguai and Swift have both been really excellent thus far.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. Lean on those 2 running backs and then go from there. I'm guessing really that the weather is kind of playing havoc with those receivers. I'm sure they're slipping around a little bit. they're probably think it's probably in the back of their heads. It's different than when you're playing in September and October in Chicago. There's, it's the weather's beautiful. So that they're just going to have to maybe scale some things down, keep the passes short, let these guys get into a rhythm. Because if you're just thinking you're going to roll out and, throw the ball across your body 20, 30 yards, you could end up throwing picks galore. Like, just slow it down. Like I said, make the extra throw it away to live another down, and you'll be able to move the ball. But it's a dogfight in Chicago, so you've got to give Chicago credit. The Rams have just, they've got to be smart. But Chicago can't score too quick, because I still think this Rams offense is very explosive and can score on a flip of a dime. So it's going to be interesting how these teams go about it the second half.
Oh, absolutely, because you look at the Rams, they may struggle over a longer period of time, especially in adverse conditions. But when you get them down to a 2-minute warning situation, it's like Matthew Stafford dials it back to yesteryear. So it's a situation where the Bears really cannot play with fire, because we saw that happen with the Panthers. They gave them too much time and then they got burned by it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where maybe instead of, going for it on 4th and 2 or 4th and 3, if you can take the 3, get your points, and just take it from there. Sometimes you just eating the clock a little bit more to keep the ball out of Stafford's hands is just as good as a sack or a pick. Just keep the offense off the field. So we'll see how the Bears go about it. But like I said, I think this game is solid. It's been one of the better games of the weekend, and we'll see what happens.
Now, another game that I'm not sure if we could say was one of the best of the weekend.
Let's all put it up for CJ Stroud, folks. CJ Stroud.
You'd think I'd take more joy out of watching the Texans lose, but that's Patriots having success. It's just a pill that's still too bitter to swallow.
It just burns you like nobody's business, man. Wow, man.
It's a weird type of burn now, though, because I genuinely like Drake May, and I never genuinely disliked Tom Brady. And I think Mike Vrabel is a very likable guy, even in his playing days. He's very hard-nosed type of linebacker. It's just that logo. It's just that building. It's just that owner. I just cannot. I just cannot take any. Even if I generally like the players in the uniforms, I still cannot put myself in a position to take positivity from their successes.
Well, Robert Kraft is pouring him some tonight, rocking his gear. He's probably hanging out with somebody, 2 Chainz, or who knows who he rolls with nowadays. Just enjoying it, because Houston God bless their defense, because if their defense wasn't on that field, this game New England would have scored like 60 points. Yeah. Like this was unreal.
Just tell Bob Kraft to avoid calling in the masseuses. Sorry. I can't help myself.
Poor Robert Kraft. And the crazy thing is, it's not like New England played mistake-free ball. Drake May, gives the ball up 3 times, and you're thinking, yes. You're sitting there saying, okay, the Texans are, one of these turnovers, the Texans have to cash in. This is where the tide turns, and it just never happens.
No, I think the big storyline out of this is not just the turnovers from one side or the other, but the turnovers overall, because they were all over the place, and it was really who took advantage of which ones, and which turnovers came at a time that really crippled the committing team in a sense of a word. I mean, and in the terms of CJ Stroud's turnovers, I mean, there was one pick that you can't really blame him too much because it was a tip ball. But talk about like football being a game of inches and the Patriots benefiting from every inch. The first pick was down on the sideline with nearly a blade of grass between Carlton Davis's knee and the sideline. You have, of course, the pick six. and that getting that run back. It was just CJ Stroud's interceptions just occurred in ways to completely dismantle Houston.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen somebody just literally just throw the ball up and hope and pray as he throws it that something good's going to happen. I know Nico Collins wasn't there. Like the guy, he's been missing weapons. Like I get it, but you're a quarterback. Like like you can't put the ball up like that, especially with the weather and everything. Like you're asking for it, and good teams take advantage of that, and that's what New England is a good team, and they took total advantage of CJ and his mishaps. Now I don't know if he just got inside his own head. He was just trying way too hard, but like the run game really wasn't there. There were a couple spots where they moved the ball a little bit on the ground, but overall the run game was pretty much contained. And it's basically New England said, "All right, CJ, you're going to beat us with your arm. We want you to beat us with your arm." And he couldn't do it.
To your point on Nico Collins, it's interesting that he cannot get used to Nico Collins not being on the field, because this is a guy that's really been in and out of the lineup since he's been with the Texans. You'd think CJ Stroud would almost see Nico Collins as a bonus as opposed to a consistent who happens to not be there.
Yeah, and then Dalton Schultz gets hurt, so then he's out of the game, and then he's got to depend on Matt Stover. People are like, who? Yes, Matt Stover. And mind you, Matt Stover, then he gets hurt. So the injuries started to pile up, but you're an NFL quarterback. You can't just throw the ball up like he did. I know he probably just got inside his head, and just at that point, once the fourth quarter hit, the game was pretty much a wrap. But it was a waste of that defense. This defense has played unbelievably all year. I have been like one of the biggest Houston defense supporters. I think that defense is incredible. But there's only so much your defense can do if your offense can't even move the ball to get you some points.
Yeah.
And,
I do want to dive into that a little bit more. But the other things that adversely affected the Texans, I mean, they outright left points on the field in multiple occasions. They had a touchdown very early that got called back to a penalty. They had to settle for 3. They had another drive that stalled out in the red zone. They had to settle for 3. They had another drive that they went down the field looking like they're in a groove, and Woody Marks, they finally started using Woody Marks again, and then he puts on the turf. So that's at least 3 that they left on the field. You got 4 points that they leave on the field that they settle for 3. I mean, this is, and of course, the pick 6 that, that could have been points one way or the other. I mean, in theory, New England in a lot of ways did as much as they could to potentially lose this game, but Houston just did more things to lose the game.
No, definitely. Like I said, with Drake May, 3 turnovers, and there were times where New England was definitely spotty, but their defense bailed them out. Their defense was more optimistic than Houston's were. Like, let's be honest. It didn't hurt that they were playing against a quarterback that was basically giving the ball up for free. It was almost like New England said, "Okay, fine, we're not going to score, but we know the Houston offense is going to turn the ball over again, so we're not going to worry about it." Yeah. And they were talking about it on the telecast. The way they were playing defense, they were letting receivers down the field. They weren't worried about those guys because New England's front 4 were getting consistent pressure, and CJ just couldn't see the field for whatever reason. He just couldn't sit in the pocket long enough to make throws. Yeah. So, New England was willing to live or die by that, and the Houston offense couldn't get out of its own way, and their defense kept them in this game for the majority of the game. But there's a point where your defense just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and where these hurt CJ Stroud, and they did not hurt Drake May. Drake May put the ball on the turf 4 times, but only lost 2 of them. 2 of them, the linemen were able to get the ball back. And, he did have an interception, but it was a meaningless one because it was at the end of the half. So you have this overall number of Drake Maye turnovers, but very few of them actually hindered the Patriots. So it's kind of like a weird mixed bag where it's like, okay, you could say to Drake Maye, hey, man, you got to take care of the ball a little bit better. But on the other hand, we still maintain this. Like you said, they're talking. Drake Maye even said in the post game, he was like, listen, we may not be playing great or whatever he said, but we're still winning.
And that's great because you won. But if you end up doing that in Denver, you very well could lose. People may say, yeah, well, Denver's situation has changed, but still, depending on what happens there, you fumble the ball a couple times, Drake, they could end up getting 6 points out of those 2 fumbles, and that could be the difference in the game. Drake Maye has led NFL quarterbacks this year with fumbles, with 13. So there's a problem there, and they've got to really talk to him about that. But at the end of the day, also what doesn't help is when your team fumbles, and we've seen this a ton of times, big guys want to score because it's the only time they're going to get the ball and try to rumble down the field. Just fall on the ball. Danielle Hunter had a chance. He had a strip sack, but they couldn't get the ball back because he tried to pick it up. But again, one of New England's guys was smart and just fell on the ball. Just fall on the ball. You'll get your touchdown one day, but it's the playoffs. Get the possession.
Yeah. Everyone wants to see a fat man touchdown, but they're uncommon for a reason. It's not your job.
Exactly. If the ball bounces up perfectly up into the gut there and you can grab it while you're running, then you do it. If not, just land on it. That's better than anything else you could do.
That's right. And the other side of this is the fact that we love Houston's defense as much as I don't want to give them credit. But they've had a very exceptional unit this year, and a lot of times it's in spite of how CJ Stroud and the offense has played. This is another chance. Will Anderson was an animal yet again, and every time, most if not all of Drake Maye's fumbles were like the inverse of the old tuck rule call. The infamous fumble that wasn't a fumble because of the empty hand moving forward. And you see all of Drake Maye's fumbles, his hand's back, and the ball gets knocked out before that empty hand can even come into the equation. So it was kind of like a sick bit of twisted poetry here. The fact that the empty hand wasn't a thing, and yet the fumble still didn't necessarily hurt the Patriots. But Will Anderson lived in the backfield just as much as New England's defensive line lived in CJ Stroud's back pocket.
Will Anderson Jr. is unbelievable. That defensive line is unreal for Houston. Top to bottom, the front, all the way to the back, all of it is incredible. And it was a wasted effort, unfortunately. And, going into next year, it's not like you got to worry about that defense. The defense is set. It's the question is, what is this offense going to be? Do they trust CJ Stroud to be the guy? Is he going to be on a short leash? Are they going to say, okay, well, let's kind of look and see what's in the draft, and if something falls to you, you kind of say, okay, let's pick this guy up. Like, you don't know. There's a lot of questions. The biggest question, of course, is the quarterback position. But that defense, unbelievable. Honestly, if they had beaten New England, they probably were going to the Super Bowl. I think they would have beat Denver.
Yeah. Well, Denver, like we said, Denver's not exactly they're not exactly putting up a strong fight with this Bo Nix injury. Very sad that is. I do want to be a little positive. I don't want to be all negative. Because Drake Maye, despite all the turnovers, put the ball on an absolute dime on multiple occasions. There was the touchdown to Stephon Diggs in the end zone, just squeezing it right into his hands, and then Booty with that one-handed touchdown to the ground. So I'm not going to be all negative with New England because their receivers did make some spectacular plays here.
Oh, there's no doubt. Drake Maye, when he's on, he's the guy. Like, that's why he's in the MVP conversation. Let's be real. Like, Drake Maye can throw it. And he showed it today when he had time and he made the right reads and did his thing. He gets the ball in there just as good as anybody. So there's this New England offense. It's a legit threat offense. It's not like it's smoke and mirrors or anything like that. They've got playmakers, and Drake May knows how to get the ball to the guys. They've got a two-headed running back monster, which is solid. They've got quality tight ends. Like, this team has a great offense. And as long as Drake May is able to sit in the pocket, do his thing, he can throw the ball as good as anyone. He can scramble as well. His only issue is he's got to keep the ball from hitting the turf. He's got to watch himself. He's got to get that clock better in his head where, okay, I either got to run, I got to throw this thing away because someone's coming to swipe at me. And that's the issue.
And that opens up a point about the kind of overall quality of the way their team's built, because you mentioned the running backs. Henderson got out for a couple medium kind of ranged runs, but for the most part, the Houston defense kept him in check. Stevenson missed a chunk of time early with some eye situation, whatever that wound up being. He came back later, but he also was fairly ineffective. And May, despite all the turnovers, didn't do enough to lose them the game. So this is kind of a team where they are a true epitome of a team. There is no one part of the onus. Obviously, always goes to the quarterback, but there's really no one part of this team that's head and shoulders above the rest.
No. The way that this offense is run, it's basically whoever's in the right spot is who's going to beat you. Whether it's the running backs, the wide receivers. Now, Stephon Diggs, he has his role, and he seemed to embrace it. Like, he's not getting 8 to 10 looks a game, but he's going to get his looks when the time is right, and he seems to be fine with that. And you've got these other guys on this team, Hunter Henry and stuff like that, where when their number's called, they deliver. So it's basically almost like the epitome of do your job, but Mike Vrabel's version of it.
I was gonna say problematic receivers that go to New England and are on their best behavior. We've never heard that one before.
Well, they usually are good for a year or so, and then whatever. Like, the only one who really fell apart was Antonio Brown. He was there for like 2 or 3 games, and then they shipped him off. But Randy Moss came and became a model citizen. People thought Randy was going to be a problem. There were some, but I think this team has really believe that it's everyone's got their role and no one is bigger than the team. And to go from 4-13 to 14-3 and on the cusp of a Super Bowl, Mike Vrabel's got magic.
I hate it, but it is what it is. I suppose it is what it is. I hope at some point this postseason they hit some kind of a difficult game.
Well, it may not be till the Super Bowl, because right now, like we said, but who knows? Denver's saying all the right things, saying they believe in Jared Stidham, and they shouldn't miss a beat, even though the guy hasn't started a game in like 4 or 5 years. But they swear by him, so we're gonna find out.
I'll suffice it to say I'll swallow my pride at least for another one, as we are on the cusp of Championship Sunday. Buccs McGee, sir, take us off air with your final thoughts.
Texans, heck of a season. You guys started out 0-3. Most teams who start out 0-3 don't make the playoffs and just stumble, but you guys flipped it around. Unfortunately, CJ just didn't have it today. You got a big question in the offseason. Is he your guy? Your defense is set for another couple years, but is your quarterback the guy? New England, some guy in the stands was holding the sign, and it said, "The good times are back." Someone here may not feel too happy about that, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens in Denver. Rams and Bears are battling it out. Whoever wins this game has got a tough task in Seattle, so we'll see what happens. But conference championships right around the corner.